of editorial at Vancouver-based Canada-wide media and editor-in-chief of BC Business Magazine. And prior to that, he was editorial director at Rogers media-owned marketing magazine in Toronto and at Calgary-based Redpoint Media Group. Tom?
Thank you very much. So welcome, everyone. I'm sure we're going to have a few more people join us in the first early slides here. So yeah, just to reiterate, there's going to be a lot covered here. Some of it's going to be glazed over. Some of it's going to be kind of geeky and really in-depth. So by all means, dive in with your questions. We'll stop if there's anything on fire or anything pressing. Otherwise, we're going to have lots of time at the end. So we'll get started here. The session is called How to Give Your Audience More and More Often. Today we're going to start really big picture. I want you to leave here with your audience top of mind, where they are, what they want, and how to make them want it from you. Essentially, what we're going to try to do today is help you matter more to your audience, and by extension, of course, your advertisers. The result of this is that you'll have a much better idea how you can connect with your advertisers and audience in useful, engaging ways. And those are two words, useful and engaging, that are going to come up over and over again over the next hour or so. How can we get to where your audience is and give them something they're not getting yet? I mean, that has long been the differentiator for magazines and the purpose of magazine publishers and brands. Before we begin, like I said, it is participatory, so just chime in here if you've got any questions, and we will get to them. It's a webinar, but we'll try to make it as conversational as possible, so you just don't hear me talking for minutes on end. So basically, the session is predicated by a few assumptions. We're not in journalism anymore, marketing or advertising game. We're in the audience game. And by extension, a monthly magazine is just not enough anymore. Your audience expects daily engagement with the topics that are important to them. If that seems a little bit newsroomish, maybe stealing a bit of market share and technique from our friends in the dailies. Well, it's because it is, and you'll see with the examples I'm going to be talking about, specifically Marketing Magazine, as well as my recent position as editor-in-chief of BC Business. This is exactly where I'm confident, and the teams at both brands are confident that the promised land lies is very much in a more frequent engagement, kind of feed out of the cement of a monthly publication. So why am I talking to you about audience engagement? Basically, the quest for identifying and segmenting my audience has paralleled my past 3 years professionally. I took over the editor-in-chief role at Marketing Magazine, stayed there for 2 years, then moved on to BC Business about 6 months ago. And throughout that whole experience, these assumptions started bubbling up, and as badly as magazines were getting hit, as you know, we've all kind of heard the doom and gloom, there are some silver linings, and that's what I'd like to focus on today. And questions that have risen as a result to the top are some of the ones we're going to question today. So one of the things that I'd like to start off with is again, these inspiring words there from Mr. Magazine, Samir Husni, and his words sort of say it all. Romancing our customers should be our first and major mission while we are creating any medium. Falling in love with our customers and not our machines should be our goal. Forget about the machines, forget about ink on paper, forget about pixels on the screen, and forget about bytes on the airways. Fall in love with your customers, both on the sending and receiving ends. The result will be the best conceived media that will engage both senders and receivers. I like to bring that up because you know the world of audience engagement is just absolutely multifaceted. You've got agencies, you've got publishers, you basically have bots all trying to do the same thing. But if we just remember that it really is about being useful, being engaging, and really absolutely just aggressive with guarding people's time, and making sure our audience is absolutely serviced, really only good things can happen. So with that inspiration, I'll discuss, like I said, my experience and lessons from Marketing Magazine, which first has more of a robust, thorough audience engagement platform than BC Business does. I'll then show you some of the audience first changes made at BC Business, and this is literally the paint is still drying. We are a couple of weeks from pulling the tarp off of the new product, and I'll definitely highlight sort of what that looks like based on some of the principles and rules that we're going to be talking about today. So BC Business, just to end off, has resembled a more traditional magazine. You know, you've got an infrequent newsletter, monthly print schedule. We're also, like I said, literally mere weeks from getting out of those dark ages. We're kind of going boldly forth with a lot of the elements that I was able to learn at Marketing Magazine, which had a lot more of a robust feeling. It's had its audience channels a bit more dialed. There were redesigned. Its channels were constantly redesigned and overhauled, and essentially all in the name of better engaging with readers and advertisers. Marketing is a 105-year-old voice of Canada's media, advertising, PR, and marketing industry. It used to be the indispensable Bible of the industry, and still had the potential to be. So that was a big part of my taking over. It had a lot of sophisticated content channels and revenue generating channels. It had a lot of what your products, some of your products have. It had the attention of a wide audience and had for many, many years. Subscriptions were the envy of the industry, where they were 100% paid, still are to a degree. The newsletters were revenue generating and twice a day. So, I mentioned stealing a page from the daily in terms of audience engagement and frequency of engagement. Marketing has been doing it for many years as a trade publication. The website as well was revenue generating, working very, very well for them. Their events were absolutely the revenue drivers. They were profitable, in demand, big profile, and big name speakers. 12 events ranging from sports marketing to multicultural marketing, full day events. And also there were award shows. And essentially the Marketing Awards, 90 years old, the most prestigious advertising awards in the country. They were absolutely massive on Twitter, one of the most followed magazines currently. About 25,000 Twitter followers when I started, now pushing 62,000. But of course, those are all wonderful audience engagement channels, but there were challenges. Their print subscriptions were dropping year over year. Even after we cut the annual subscription by half, people were using the websites and coming to events without and absolutely no awareness of the magazine. Might as well have been two completely different elements. And the commentary and the community area was an absolute ghost town in terms of comments and just any sort of social engagement, which was crazy for a community that gets paid to communicate, that being Canada's advertising, media, and PR industry. And a big problem, and one that we had wanted to solve right away, was we really didn't know who our visitors were to the website. We had our subscribers, which were not by any stretch of the imagination in a sophisticated database. They were essentially straight up print subscribers without a lot of information. Not a lot of deep diving was done. We knew, we had about 7,000 paid print subscribers, but they were shrinking. So not only did we not really have a lot of information about them, they weren't really interested in the print product. However, our online visitors and our uniques were growing. They were basically they rose from about 70,000 when I started to about 100,000 plus today, which is quite large for a B2B title. So that was the situation with marketing, and kind of trying to fix the situation is where a lot of the insights to today's presentation came from. Our goal to fix all of this in terms of finding out exactly who everybody was simple, or so we thought. We wanted to reinvent our subscription model as a professional membership with detailed user info, gated content, daily news feeds, and exclusive events. Everybody would pay, and by signing up to pay, of course, they would qualify themselves and segment themselves and allow us to build a really nice, robust database. As tempting as that promised land was, though, we decided to embark on the most important thing that you can do, no matter the size of your magazine, before doing anything, which is creating an audience survey. Go with the most sophisticated one that you can afford. Doing so for us, which was actually a benefit of working with a behemoth like Rogers and being owned by Rogers. They have Rogers has a very sophisticated in-house research department, and we're able to piggyback on that, and we're able to just get about a 60-page audience survey feedback document that has ended up being the core of all of our decisions that we made over my 2-year tenure there. Doing so eliminated a lot of other assumptions that we had, and basically I think it really saved the business for the publication, as opposed to just the absolute catastrophe that would have hit us, I think, if we would have gone exclusively paid. In terms of what some of the steps that we did and what ended up happening, I think the first thing that we were able to do is, like I said, really get into put together an audience survey. Prior to that, we really had to figure out some of the questions and some of the key topics facing our consumers and our audience about what we actually wanted to ask them, what information would have been absolutely indispensable, because with audience surveys, you don't want to hit people up too much, too frequently, and you also, you always have to give them a pretty good prize. So we don't want to be giving away iPads every quarter. We had to make sure that we got this reader survey out, and it was done right. So first off, we had to evaluate our current audience. So we made a list of all the places where we currently reached to readers. And again, this is a really good potential first step for everyone listening today, prior to embarking on an audience survey. Do you have your subscription list? Who are those people? Segment them. Events. Who are the people who attend your events? What are some of the lists and the names that you have there? Who are your Twitter followers? How do you currently exist in all of your audience's lives? For marketing, it was subscriptions, newsletters, websites, events, awards, shows, and predominantly our Twitter and, to a lesser degree, Facebook feed. So once we were able to identify where these people are, we then we decided to put the call out and actually get to know them. And again, I can't emphasize enough how important it was for us to avoid the speculation and invest in a deep reader survey, the sort of qualitative side of our audience. And like I said, it saved our business, or I think it did, because just assuming that people will pay without going deep and making sure that you sort of establish the rules of engagement and really see what they think of you and how much they value you. It's just an absolutely long-term process, and again, one that I'll take you through that we've been doing marketing and have duplicated for BC Business to a degree. So the intro, the potential reader survey intro, that you could do that we did is basically this. It's the feedback you provide will help us give our readers and users more of what they need and want from our magazine. And a little bit about the company and the magazine and the brand, and of course the little prize at the end. But I'll just let you have a read. So these are some more questions that we had. The first one's right off the bat, really asking people about what they wanted and really segmenting it and focusing on the fact that this was a business audience. I mean, obviously this is scalable and customizable based on your audience. But again, it's identifying just what needs does the magazine serve, and not leaving anything to assumption. And this works its way down as we'll get to in terms of a marketplace survey as well. What people identify as competitors to you, both regionally, but also for their time. So you're talking about competitors for both advertising dollars, but also for audiences' time, which obviously increasingly is growing with every day and every media vertical and media brand launched. Again, a bit more here, trying to segment preferred method of delivery. So it's not just what stories do you want to hear, or do you want to see in the print product or online. It's actually where do you consume not just us, but where do you consume your business or your fashion or your lifestyle news. And again, which of these following e-newsletters do you read? A nice list of competitors there, both regional and elsewhere. So basically, this is the lesson, at least initially for marketing, that really set us up to roll this out properly in terms of what the next steps would be, and on our way to redesigning our channels. Once you start thinking about different channels and how your audience uses them, you start developing vital questions to your survey. So the lesson here was it was a bombshell, really. No one wanted to pay. There was an assumption up and down that people would pay if you gated it, because specifically with marketing, this was a trade magazine, and trade magazines can kind of do what they want because they're indispensable. However, for us, it was very clear that people wouldn't. Our audience would not. Overwhelmingly, they said that given their experience with what the current site and the magazine had offered, they just would not. We quickly understood that there was a lot of ramp up that needed to be done in terms of product and user experience, and the would you pay argument was just years away. But again, we'll kind of get to finessing and optimizing your product and not asking the will you pay question until you are absolutely ready, which again we'll get to towards the end of the session. So even for a mix of content, events, discounts, and magazine subscriptions are staple assets that we had offered people. The resounding answer was, again, that is not enough. We had packaged this up as a membership, and it was going to be just a little bit more expensive than the price of an annual subscription, but would really just include a whole whack of goodies in addition to the magazine subscription. And obviously it was quite obvious that people wanted to keep everything unbundled and then mix and match on their own, which again, complete 180 from what we had thought was the case. So based on that, we had to make some concessions and have a plan B here, which is what really shaped the marketing that you see now, and increasingly the changes that we were able to make at BC Business, not making the sort of erroneous assumptions that were almost made earlier. So The problem right now, based on people not really willing to give up their personal information in exchange for any sort of subscription model and really any additional goodies, be it accompanied by a credit card number or just an email. The problem was we still didn't know who most of our visitors were. Out of our 75,000 monthly uniques, only about 25,000 came to the site from the Marketing Daily, twice daily newsletter that I mentioned. We knew who they were because of the obviously e-newsletter required registration, but who are the rest? And this is the critical question for not only for marketing, still for BC Business right now, but for the rest of you as well. I mean, who are these people coming to the site and your digital channels, and how do you basically capture that visitor info with as much as much as possible? We all need to find out who these people are and how to make them more valuable as registered audience, which again, we're not going to survive on CPMs and uniques alone. The more that you can find out about your audience and segment them, the better off you'll be. So this is again, this is kind of going down the road of being able to make that happen. So more often than not, the solution is to gate by way of registration, and that's what we did at marketing. But before we did, we needed to build out our offer. Really, even for an email address, it was clear that people just will not sign up because you ask them to, or even really, frankly, for even white papers or or even an e-newsletter. You really have to bait them with something a bit more. So you can't, even for a B2B title, as we learned, you can't ask your audience to register without offering quite a bit in return. So as a result, we kind of sat back. This is about 2 years ago now, marketing, or 2.5 years ago, and we've identified key pieces of content that were premium to require registration to access. And again, these are things we did ask in the reader survey. So these are really good if you conduct your own. Make sure you ask that question. What kind of micro pieces of content do audiences hold near and dear? To us, it was archives of past issues. I mean, you've got a 105-year-old magazine. There's just the cool factor of being able to see what how sexist an ad could possibly be in 1929, and special reports like salary surveys. There are really kind of indispensable kind of pieces that your audience and editors and publishers know inherently already what those are. Those are really good low-hanging fruit for gating. There's also videos. We find videos are kind of hit and miss, but the really good ones, the exclusive ones that those one-on-ones with the thought industry leaders, really good ones for potential gating opportunities. Polls and comments. Again, it's if people want to really get into an argument, get into some sort of an article that's just trending through the roof. Gating comments is a good way. I mean, this is quite common, obviously, and the Globe and Mail and other daily newspapers, but it is restrictive in terms of signing up on Discus with your Facebook page or something like that. So things to consider as well. But if you do have that right mix, polls and commenting and that feedback loop, making that available to subscribers is quite possible as well. Another key component here, especially if your subscriber info is like that of most small Canadian magazines, in my experience, a bit of a rat's nest of inconsistency, is the need to constantly compare your online leads. Once you do have them, once you do have people sign up and give you that information that you require, obviously it can't be too onerous. You can't just, you can't ask for, children and households, that kind of stuff. I mean, you've really got to pare down to the absolute minimum. But as you're doing that, you have to make sure that your leads are are essentially workable with your current database, with your current subscriber database, and make sure all your user info is consistent. You know, those there's bound to be duplicates. There's bound to be inconsistent information. Set it up early enough where you can capture that, and you can actually speak the same language between your relatively consistent and potentially clean subscriber list and what you're collecting online from, you know, that 80% or 70% that are coming to you from not from established channels and registered channels like subscriptions and e-newsletter subscriptions. So at marketing, we only did this once, and we could bait users with new valuable content that they've been able to try out, and we've been able to measure essentially a resonance of the different kinds of contents on the site. But it does take a long time. But it's really the only way, though, to build that deeper relationship with your audience. So that's any questions just on that first part in terms of actually going out and doing that initial audit of your channels. We're going to get into the next part here, which is a little bit about you know, there's always more audience. Where are your blind spots as a relatively small or medium-sized publisher? You know, when I say a long time, what does that mean? It's my experience has been 2 years. And by that I mean it's and you'll see kind of how it plays out over the long term in the presentation as we go through it. But you're talking about an audience survey that is essentially your starting point. Based on information from that audience survey, you then have to test and implement, and there's degrees of the content that you can post and see how it resonates and what the take up is. And again, you know, there's also, as you'll see, partnership opportunities where you can allow that exclusivity that I talked about to just be a bit more frequent. You know, you can get in front of the thought leaders, and you could do so by working with external partners and advertisers, as you know, in terms of potential sort of branded sponsored pieces. All of that really requires you to test, measure, test, measure, test, measure, as well as you know, incorporating other channels like events, like special contesting. All of that requires rollout time. It requires organization, and you know, that's why I say give yourself 12 to 18 months to start. But it is something that you have to think about first and foremost in terms of audience capturing based on what they tell you, and you know, the redesign and the optimization of existing channels that follows an audit of where your audience is and what your audience wants is always going to lead with that initial feedback, and that will really make sure that you're avoiding making any sort of assumptions, you know, based on what you think your audience wants or stories that have worked in the past. So hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions before we go? Perfect. You're welcome, Lisa. So here we go. The next question, or the next part here, is there's always more audience. So as in terms of the case of marketing and really what magazine isn't after more audience, we found ourselves looking at really trying to focus on that falling subscription rate, and that set off a lot of alarm bells, obviously, because we really, based on our initial audience survey, we found that we weren't catering to a youthful demographic. We weren't kind of taking up that next generation of readers and subscribers. So, you know, we really had to consider new audience-specific initiatives and really channels that really allowed us to go after and chase the sort of next generation of people who are really not reading us nearly enough based on the audience feedback that we got. So, these are things that forced us to focus on our blind spots. We looked at partnerships with companies looking for, for a media partner, for example. Students were a big part of what we did in terms of on the marketing side. We focused on students in marketing and advertising schools and faculties. Obviously, they were the subscribers of tomorrow. We've approached professors about helping with curriculum, and we're in the process of developing a marketing campus page in the magazine where there would be a presentation of outstanding pieces of work by Canadian students. We also had initiatives where we had student panels review campaigns. And again, in turn, we were able to register students and essentially get them hooked on the importance of their trade publication, by giving them useful, basically relevant advice that mattered to them. And this isn't just for marketing, but as an industry voice, as a vertical voice, you have the ability to broker internships, create mentorship programs, and capture an impressionable audience early. And again, it's something that has to be first and foremost in terms of developing that audience of tomorrow, because as we know, existing audiences are the trend is definitely downwards, and a lot of what we found in marketing, a lot of students and a lot of people that should have been reading us weren't even aware of that their Canada had a trade title, and we moved quite quickly to eliminate that and alleviate that, which I'll get to right now here. So something else we were able to do is look at existing databases and companies that cater to students. There was a pretty amazing and unique organization, Canadian-based, called StudentAwards.com, and basically they were kind of like a campus Facebook after Facebook left campus, and essentially they were able to get I think it was something like 100 million students. A beautiful database, clean database of students, and in exchange for internship information, prizes, job offers. So basically, students had access to a pretty robust set of next steps in terms of coming out of college, university, and having access to grants and internships and jobs. But in exchange, StudentAwards.com was able to give them get a lot of information out of them. So we partnered with them and really developed a proprietary research tool with this organization about really the future of marketing according to the leaders of tomorrow. And this is just an example I bring up because as much as we need as much as we need the sort of youth readership, from a content perspective, we found that what basically people in their late teens and early 20s thought of an industry, of a niche, of a vertical, was incredibly was really of interest to our audience, our older demographic. Our older demographic and readers really appreciated the fact that we almost had a separate focus group because of this sort of third-party involvement that we had with the student database, and again, it was an opportunity for us to get in front of and segment the very students that were graduating, that were going to be in marketing and in business and in advertising, in exchange for what they thought. So that was a really nice symbiotic relationship, and I'd encourage you to look for something perhaps not as ideal and symbiotic, because I think that was a bit of a rarity, but really tapping existing student programs and student programs in the fields that you're in and your product and your title caters to, as a way to really kind of seed the next generation of readers. Something else too that we're quite happy with and just absolutely went through the roof for us was by no means an innovative program, but it was our 30 under 30 program. We had we had this initiative in mind for a while, and in terms of tapping a new younger audience, we put together this after noticing, again, not enough under 30s reading the magazine, and we created a special awards ceremony and decided to essentially bribe our youngest readers with fame, and honestly, given how many recruiters show up at the awards party, a bit of fortune. These influencers spread the recognition that we gave them, across their social networks, through friends, through media, existing channels, and it really, really worked out well for us. And I'll show you the next slide here. This is basically what the site looked like, and if you can just have a look here on the right, those are all of our sponsors, and literally they came together. This was pulled together relatively last minute, and people were all over this, which just goes to show that if you really create something for your vertical, your industry, what have you, the niche that you cover, and you highlight the up-and-comers, people are really going to support that. Not only that, it's that wonderful symbiotic relationship that kind of comes back and gives you authority and kind of presence of mind for a demographic that is tends to maybe shy away from traditional print products. Again, a note about new channels just in general. Each demands a different type of experience and information, but it needs to be consistent with your brand. With a 30 under 30, we couldn't pretend to be Vice Media. We still had to remain marketing, and by sticking to your core brand promise, your core mission statement, I think that'll only endear you to a new demographic, but on their terms, without sort of making them feel like you're flip-flopping or you're obviously just trying to attract them for obvious reasons. So if you're always funny, be funny. If you're reliable and thorough, you better be that at every audience point of contact. Other partnership ideas other than kind of going for the next generation. Again, the current issue of marketing, I mean, this is 7 months after my time, but really amazing partnership that they were able to do with DX3, which is a design and advertising conference that just happened. The current issue is a tumble cover, and this is a direct response to, again, targeting of much more of a digital, almost tech kind of startup crowd, which DX3, the event, does. The people at Marketing Magazine were able to say, okay, this is something that we need to access. This is an audience that we need to be a part of. However, what can we possibly offer in terms of any sort of value? And it turns out that the people at DX3 just needed a program for the event, and of course, love the fact that they were able to piggyback on the existing distribution of a traditional print product, and as a result, we're able to get the word out a lot more than they would have, and so sort of both parties benefited quite extensively from that media and event partnership. So again, I encourage you to really just use your existing strengths and distribution channels to tap that new audience, really without being intimidated. Often I find that you just have to ask, and ideas start flowing, and then all of a sudden you're up there in front of and being read by audiences that you never thought you would be. Point here is the absolute need to review your channels of engagement. We talked about going after the low-hanging fruit, addressing immediate concerns, at least as it pertained to marketing, and the question about targeting youth and going after a young demo. I think those are pretty universal. So now we're going to go to basically looking at what competitors are doing and sort of stealing unabashedly, for lack of a better term. I mean, this is, I talked about low-hanging fruit. This is the absolute low-hanging fruit, and we can't get too proud. We've really got to make sure that we lean on that audience survey, find out who our competitors are, both from, like I said, a regional kind of geographical perspective, but also from a psychographic perspective as far as our audience is concerned. So in terms, again, to go back to what marketing had done, we used bits and pieces of best practices from indirect competitors like Mashable and Brand Republic. Our reader survey asked our users about what industry sources they found indispensable. They told us, and guess what? The next day we were on those sites, mining some of the techniques and some of the audience engagement initiatives that they were doing, because frankly, our audience was there. We really had to reproduce a little bit of what was being done there. One of our problem for us has been at marketing has been to populate that twice a day e-newsletter that once required 8 original stories a day. I mean, that was just absolutely taxing, and the print product and those deep investigative pieces were suffering as a result. So we were able to take a little bit of some ideas and some best practices from both Mashable, Brand Republic, and several others, started running polls in the newsletter. Again, very, very highly engaging, really interesting, and again, they don't require the deep research of a 500-word story, as well as digest and summaries. We had our weekly e-newsletter twice a day, and then on the weekend, in order to open up more inventory for ad space for our e-newsletters, the essential media stories you missed this week, and that was a nice summary of a weekend product. Again, directly lifted from one of our competitors, or at least indirect competitors. Something like this week's most popular stories, really nice way to package up exactly what your audience has deemed worthy, and then run that in a nice weekend digest. Not a lot of effort, but a real user-first content strategy that's been in use for years. So remember, you want to overwhelm. You don't want to overwhelm, you do want to overwhelm your audience with convenience, where they can't help but give you their email address when you ask for it, but just not yet, because we're not there yet. So this is just my test to see if everyone's awake. So hopefully you are. Otherwise, you're rubbing your eyes. Good. Again, along the way, as you present new products, as you react to your audience survey, you have to solicit feedback about your user experience in each channel, and keep watching your site analytics for what channel is driving traffic, and only focus on the things that your audience has identified initially in that survey that they hold near and dear, but also what is it that you're presenting that they find absolutely indispensable, and that they find themselves going to, day in and day out. Jumping ahead to BC Business now, because we've talked a lot about rules and principles, and like I said, a lot of this stuff was incorporated into BC Business and the recent relaunch that we did. It took us about 3 months. Lisa's question about how long does it take. This was a very condensed version based on what I learned and what I'm sharing with you guys today. We were able to identify reader preferences, do a relatively robust reader survey. We gave away an iPad to make sure we broke that magic number of 200 people, which is, as an aside, that's what you want. Any reader survey, you want at least 200 people, because the changes in data from 200 to on up to infinity really vary very little. It's the inconsistencies happen in the first 200 of audience tested. So that's a little bit of research geek speak for you guys, but make sure that happens. At anything less than 200, really even 250 is somewhat suspect. So So like I said, BC Business, we just finished a 3-month overhaul of our brand by adhering to the principles I just outlined above. So based on reader feedback, so the new BC Business, is based on reader feedback plus the best practices of indirect and direct competitors, and really the commitment to redesign wholesale. The thinking is that based on all the steps that we had talked about so far, the commitment should be there to redesign if need be. I mean, if you're doing this anyway, absolutely fantastic. Redesigning and putting something new in front of your readers is not to be taken lightly. So perhaps it's not even necessary. But my experience at BC Business has been that we just could not proceed with the existing structure, so we really had to look at a redesign. But again, the groundwork had to be laid, and the importance of it is obviously what we're discussing today. So these 3 things: reader feedback, best practices of competitors, and commitment to redesign wholesale, has given us this. And I want to share this with you guys because right now, BC Business is a 4 sort of platform property. This is overwhelming, so I'm just going to back up for a bit as I explain the new product here. It used to be a monthly product with basically a weekly newsletter that was, it just didn't really do the job. It was essentially repurposed print stories. Not a lot of original kind of non-print stuff. So that wasn't enough. One of the tenets of the presentation was being a monthly publication is not enough. We were losing readers to daily competitors. There's a product in BC or in Vancouver area called Business in Vancouver. They do an amazing job being a daily newspaper, basically daily business newspaper. So they were a massive competitor. There were also the daily newspapers. They were hitting us, and also the fact that we just weren't convenient. We weren't optimized to give our audience what they wanted. Our audience really requested something mobile first. They said, the analytics indicated 30%, now 30%, when we did this about 25%, of all our traffic came from our mobile audience. And our site was obviously not responsive at all. There was also, like I said, the daily competitors, and frankly, the magazine was designed as almost as a monthly newspaper, kind of trying to react to stories on a monthly basis, which are never really, unless you're breaking them, are never really effective, but also very much a lean back experience where the stories were long form. So it was a bit neither here nor there. So we had to really identify our insufficiencies here and present a product that was a daily newsroom, which fed a daily newsletter, again, taking on direct competitors in our marketplace, and then evolving into a more sophisticated read in print, and then, of course, we simultaneously, reacting to our reader survey, launched an iPad product, again, like a week ago. So this is the paint still drying. So what we've got is essentially a 4-platform product that has taken care of our audience needs, has addressed sort of the attrition that we're seeing, and the flight to competitors regionally, and also created a print product that works quite well with all of those platforms, and doesn't try to be the internet on paper, or doesn't try to sort of be too big other than just a sophisticated reading experience, in a sort of lean back environment. So the challenge here, though, and this is when you guys go back to your offices, you try to digest all this, is how do we how do we change and how do we evolve when we don't have any budgets to do so? So, and obviously that was first and foremost of my challenges. It's all great to talk about reader feedback and being nimble and taking out competitors and, sort of changing the world. However, how do we do this when everyone's already overworked and really there's no more budget? So this is what we're able to do. This takes a lot of explanation, so look close here. The bottom part here, we'll start from the bottom, go up. Every single of our staffers, every single one of our staffers has been given a vertical. Now, verticals, what does that mean? We're able to talk to our audience and survey them and kind of identify the most important things that BC Business means to them. What when they think of BC Business, what do they think of? So obviously things like natural resources, things like small business, things like tech and startups, things like media and marketing, all of those things kind of bubbled up to the surface. We're able to establish what it is that mattered to our readership and internalize that to our existing staff. So we're pretty lucky at BC Business. We have about 6 staff, which is which is pretty generous by Canadian magazine standards, at least Western Canadian magazine standards. So we gave everybody a vertical or two, and basically still said, you're responsible for the front of the book, you're responsible for second edits on, the feature well, you're responsible for cover copy, all the great stuff that you were doing before. But now, not only are you a magazine editor, you're actually now a topic expert. You're a vertical. You're basically, you own your own vertical. So in my case, coming from Marketing Magazine, I handle media and marketing in British Columbia. So what that means is I'm responsible for about 3 daily stories, 3 weekly stories per week. So basically, be it a press release, followed up with a phone call, an exclusive Q&A. The example that's worked really well for us is because of this newsroom model, we're able to break the fact that TED was coming to Vancouver. We were the first ones to run that story because the good people at, well, I won't say who, but our great sources came to us and said, hey, you've got this daily newsroom, it's new, looks good. By the way, run with this. And that was by far, I think that was our most popular story ever. So everybody has their own vertical. Everybody is expected to comb the regional business mags, trade magazines, blogs, dailies, press releases, surveys, and then sort of create a daily industry story according to whatever their vertical is. And again, that can be an original column. That's that third little blob. Original column, video, could be curated, what have you, sort of this is what the Globe's reporting, this is what the Vancouver Sun's reporting, kind of both stories, 3 stories are here, kind of the Huffington Post model. And then every single of one of our editors, people who had never ever worked in a content management system before, were retrained and are now responsible for uploading and curating their vertical. So, if your handle is real estate, only you and only you sort of evolve it to a daily news story, post it to the website, and make sure it's in the daily newsletter. And then again, if it's a good enough story, you pitch it to the magazine. So that's kind of a process that we're able to develop based on very, very little resources, and the need to keep up with our existing competitors. A big part here too is the new BC Business website. Just on the right side here, once a story's posted, again, that same editor, I don't care if before he or she was maybe sorry, I got a car alarm going off here. Okay, it stopped. I don't care if that editor was, responsible only for editing, 3 features per magazine cycle. Well, if their handle is natural resources, they have to, they're responsible for getting the content out, putting it across our various social networks. Every editor has a a Twitter password now. They tweet. They really do all they can to get that story out and in front of as many people as possible. And again, they're also responsible for looking at their reader comments, monitoring comments, updating stories if they do change. And then that evolution goes from the daily newsletter, and if there's huge pickup with our audience, all the more reason that our editorial staff can pitch it to the magazine, pitch it to the magazine issue, because again, the pitch session becomes, hey, it's not great because I think it's great. It's great because it's absolutely going off the charts, and our audience is telling us it's great. So it really works as a magazine issue. It's worthy of that deeper read, and then it graduates up to the print story, and then it makes its way to the magazine and the iPad as well. And the nice thing is, once it sort of graduates up all the way, you then have that benefit of time where you develop the digital assets that then live both on the iPad and live down on the website. So it's sort of a daily newsroom, but it is tweaked in a way that allows the existing print product and the iPad product to just be that much more interactive and that much more interesting without overly taxing your existing resources. So don't get me wrong, my editorial team still hates me, but it is something that we're firmly of the belief that this is not, it's, again, a monthly magazine is not enough anymore. We sort of talked about why, and this is the big takeaway in terms of how you can actually make this happen and sort of bolt it on to whatever you're doing, assuming that you've done the work that we had talked about in terms of what your audience needs. I mean, maybe your audience is totally happy with a monthly magazine. Absolutely, no problem at all. Then you don't need this. But in our experience and the experience at least of the business audience in Western Canada, that clearly wasn't the case. Great questions, guys. Okay, so how do you maintain your, sorry, it's getting away from me here. How do you maintain your overall brand with so many contributors to the daily newsroom? The thing is, our existing editors, the people who were hired on long before I came on, for example, they're the ones that were responsible for the print product anyway. So if we could trust them to create the print product monthly, we could trust them to create, a curated 150-word rewrite of a press release that's of interest to people in their vertical and readers in their vertical. So hopefully that answers your question. It's existing editors, people who are hired to be both part of the magazine, but now additionally are able to be part of this channel. Additional channels. Yeah, we're good. So the question is, we wrestle with how much is too much when it comes to social media. We don't want our readers to feel inundated by us like we're stalking them. For sure. But again, I mean, this is where editorial judgment comes in, and the big reason for this rollout was we were missing business stories. I mean, we were BC Business, but there were, like I said, our feet were in cement to a degree. We just weren't. It was still a wonderful reading experience from a print perspective. The stories were great. It was an award-winning product, absolutely. But again, with the existing social channels and the competition for reader attention, we can react as well as as we wanted. So this really allowed us to just increase the frequency. And in terms of inundating our readers, this is why, to a degree, we went down that vertical element, because we're not at this point yet, but maybe in a few months, I'd love to be able for people, as we again segment them, as we kind of personalize them, as we get their information, why not just give them a personalized magazine where all they get is marketing and media and natural resources in British Columbia. And it's not this overarching BC business, inundation where it's like everything to do with business and here it is. That's why that sort of segmentation we really believe starts with people and having contact people and editors and staffers and topical experts, and they will then know what is of interest and hopefully not inundate. But to a degree, it's also on the audience side. If audiences are interested in particular things, then they can follow it. And that's, you also bring a good point. One of the things that we did early on was create separate handles for each of our verticals. So, we have BCB_David, BCB_Lindsay. And the thinking is to build out Twitter followers, for example, that are then, they know and they identify with the people that cover certain beats. Again, a way to get around the inundation. But honestly, I mean, if what you're saying is good stuff, and if you've done your homework and you understand what your audience wants, I don't think you can go wrong with frequency. Honestly, I mean, people are, the media consumption habits are changing, and news is absolutely hot. So hopefully that answers your question. How do you, a couple more questions here. How do you find the daily newsletters received? Is that oversaturating your readers' inboxes? What's your open rate? Very, very good question and topical. This was a direct response to our competitor that I mentioned, the daily business product in the marketplace. Our newsletter, when it was weekly, was opened more than our daily, which was expected, actually, because we didn't, there was no opt-in. We had our whole entire list of our weekly newsletter, and we just started pumping out daily newsletters to them with an explanation. This is the way that we're doing it now. Way more content, and backed it up by having a site that was redesigned, which is something I didn't mention. The BC Business site is responsive and redesigned, and it's vertical driven. So things like bcbusiness.ca/media marketing /natural resources /etc. It's very vertically organized. So people are, they have been opting out, absolutely, but that's something that was expected, because it is a way for us to make it convenient and tell people that they can now see what's going on in the province daily, and we've organized it again according to the time of deployment and the time of reading that they told us, which was early in the morning, and we really want to come off as that your daily kind of hit of business news in the province. So the next question here is length of stories online. Will people read feature length, about 1,000 words? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, content is a wonderful thing. It's as storytellers, I think we're in this amazing sort of position to decide how best to tell a story. So, for example, there was just a bit more about the TED Talk thing. I mean, we saw TED going through the roof based on on that initial story we broke. So we started doing TED Diaries, where the TED conference that happened in Long Beach just 2 weeks ago, we had people, delegates from Vancouver, go down there, and I just hit them up, kind of piggybacked, hey guys, can you write some diaries for us? And those were like 150, 200 words, and really, really well read. Also, video is a really good way to get about this, go about this. I had mentioned, as part of our editorial team, we hired a video intern, and he's been busier than than I've been over the last few months. Really good way to engage audiences. And again, this is not really specific to your reader survey. This is just a general kind of behavior online. People love video, and if you can, I would suggest bringing in some sort of videographer. Intern is always the easiest option, but as long as there's a a dedicated plan to incorporate a good person in-house, which is what we're in the process of trying to do right now, just because it really allows you to vary your content, and it's really fantastic just not to be kind of beholden to 500, 1,000 words of print with every single online posting that you do, but to throw up a video there. So again, hopefully that answers your question. There's a ton of options for content and how that can look. So yeah. Okay, quick question here. Sorry, these questions are so good. We're almost done with the presentation, so let me take a couple more here. Does BCB have a dedicated digital staff as well? See, this is the wonderful thing. It doesn't, and it doesn't need to. I mean, we've retrained the whole staff to be able to post their own stories. We've had, like I said, we've had staff that have never posted a story online before, have never sent a tweet. We were lucky enough to have good people where they embraced it, and now every single person is not just a digital, it's not segmented to digital editors or editors. Everyone is a journalist, everyone's an editor, and it goes across all channels. Just what you see here. And the same person that posts a story that maybe writes a feature story in the magazine is also expected to go on Twitter or LinkedIn and promote their story. It's like I said, it's not enough to work at to run a monthly magazine anymore. It really isn't. At least I think it isn't. So yeah, there you go. We tried for 4. And 4 sort of fresh original ones, and we dialed it back to 3 because it was, people go on vacation, and it just, and we found that the 4th one was just a fraction in terms of opens from the top 3. So again, there's editorial judgment in the daily newsletter positioning of stories. We have the juiciest stories obviously up front. Those are the ones that go into the subject. And then the 3rd one, bit of a tail off, but it's still quite strong. And then the 4th one just was almost not being opened at all. So we knocked it back to 3. But in addition to the e-newsletter, and sign up for it at bcbusiness.ca just to see. And we have an option there as well to run editors' picks, which tend to be just the highest trending stories, the most shared over the past few days, and those are in there as well. So I mean, all told, about 6 stories appear in every daily newsletter, with 3 quite notably highlighted. All right. So once you sort of establish that volume, you establish that value, you establish that those deliverables to your audience. It's your turn to ask your audience to return the favor. As you try out audience engagement techniques, note where the opportunities are to register users. As I said, it's when it comes time to ask for an email and a password, you'll be ready. But again, just not yet, because honestly, it's you don't want to freak people out. You really have to give them the value that you matter in their life, and it's essentially an altruistic relationship. But again, we'll get to just how and where you could sort of towards the end here. You talk about value and influence and how to matter. One of the things we did in the process of doing a BC Business did in marketing is your influential editorial advisory board. They've been, our experience has been, these are people who work for free. They are honored to be part of any media property that speaks to their colleagues, their audience, and they're going to give you thought leadership and all the audience approved service and utility that your website never could. I mean, these are people that you have to find that are specific to your niche, that are influencers, that are thought leaders, and all of our verticals, all of our business industry sectors have them. Find them and get them involved. I mean, the question was, how do you keep up with all the content to fuel a sort of daily newsroom model, or frankly even a weekly online updates if you're 2 or 3 person shop. This is a really good way to do it. You could have a we're in the process of doing, again, that Huffington Post model where, hey, this is something that where BC Business is a distribution channel for you. You've got pretty amazing things to say. Run it by us first, but why not be a contributor? Why not be a columnist? Not necessarily in the print product, but again, if you get a really good feeling, if you nab someone who's a star in your industry, who's kind of helping you shape your product, well then you could reward them, and frankly, reward yourself by having them in your online, and again, track how they do, and rotate your editorial advisory board as well. But it's huge value. Another pretty amazing thing is that these people can also double as judges, or juries for awards programs. When I talked about our 30 Under 30 program, just a fantastic way for us to incorporate our editorial advisory board was just to ask, hey, do you guys want to be a part of this? We'll do all the heavy lifting. It's literally going to be 2 hours. We'll buy lunch, and we'll just review applications of applicants, of people that have sent in nominations, and it was great. I mean, and again, you talk about mentorship opportunities. You talk about targeting the sort of youth. This is one way that a seasoned editorial advisory board will get interested really fast when you do have the opportunity as a voice of an industry, or a voice of a vertical, or a voice of a niche even, combining the seasoned, accomplished leaders with the sort of up and comers. So do not discount your editorial advisory board either. So in terms of next steps here, we've got just a few more slides. Once you've established your strategy and what it is your competitors are doing, what it is your audience wants, what your editorial advisory board tells you to do, and have been able to sort of track a lot of the initiatives that you've posted online, and you've got this bit of metrics behind you. Now is the time when you can actually say you have a mandate, given your channel evaluation and audience industry research, and then boldly, go and make that call. Do we blow up what we're doing, and because we're hampered otherwise, or do we just sort of tweak here and there and create something that is just kind of an evolution of what we've been doing already? So those are things to think about. Just making sure everyone's awake still. Good. All right. So now, I mentioned once you do create your new channel, or your tweak channel, or what have you, if you've acted on their feedback, browsing patterns and preferences will evolve. You'll see a bit of a difference. We certainly are at BC Business, and only then can you consider a typo in there. Sorry, guys. Only then can you consider a registration for access of some sort. Again, this is a very sensitive subject, and I would recommend that it's done only after your audience behavior and your sort of user preference is pretty rock solid, and at that point you can start collecting. But when you've taken your time here and you've built all of this groundwork, you'll then be able to say, you know what, there's the likelihood of somebody signing up and not being sort of pissed off at my assumption that I'm my product is so useful as to give an email address and eventually maybe a credit card number, because you've laid the groundwork, you've studied, you've sat back and watched, and again, it's something that that needs to get done. And again, this is completely a 180 based off of what I almost did and what my team almost did in marketing, which is, okay, let's gate it. People will pay, and that's why I included that bit of anecdote up front, because it just goes to show you that it's not that easy, and the evolution is a labored one, and one that I've been doing over the last couple of years, really 2.5, 3 years. So just some last points here about finally pulling the trigger on watching your audience play and asking them for that much needed, that gold, that information. Ask for demo data before asking for payment. Again, that's just months and months of just trying to get as much as you can without asking for any sort of credit card or payment up front. And then always highlight that membership, the benefits, and how being a member will help your audience work and live smarter. I mean, that's essentially the mantra and the purpose of your magazine. One of the great things we did was marketing, and it really worked well, is these sort of pop-up parties where we went on Twitter and sort of the day of the party, we sent it in our daily newsletter. It was basically a reader appreciation party. And again, things like that, tell you that tell our readers that we care. We know that they're out there. We know that they're slogging away. The offer is packaged up and verbalized as such. And you work with a sponsor, you work with a bar or a restaurant, you do some contra, and you do one of these, a couple of these a year, and that utility that you play in people's lives, will really start being obvious. And also things like if you have events, percentage off events, even some sort of lunch with an editor. I mean, all of these things are really highlight the benefits of registration and being deeper in your community. Just a question here. We'll get to these questions here. Actually, you know what, guys? We'll get to these in a sec, and we'll just finish this off here. And here, we wanted to show a video, but you guys will have to go to BC Business's website to see it. But basically, once you do take the wrapping off, and you do roll out a new product or any really tweaks, to be honest, don't be afraid to promote what you've done with your audience's interest in mind. And this is where my dramatic redesign video was supposed to be, but I got this in too late, so apologies. However, it is at bcbusiness.ca/videos, and I think it's the third one down, so you guys can have a look at that after. So yeah, I mean, so parting thoughts. You're in a magazine game because you help people do their jobs or live better and smarter. Organizing your offerings will let you transcend the role of an industry magazine, not once a month thing that lands in people's mailboxes, and make you an indispensable tool. And thank you for joining us. We'll take some questions. I basically live and breathe all this kind of stuff on Twitter, so there I am, bcbusiness.ca. And opinion does BC Business publish? And do you use your opinion pieces differently than your news pieces? So great question. I think in the print product, we've created, we've really been trying to establish, destination columns, just like everyone else is, and we've got about 3 now that we've done, and essentially they're very vertical specific. So we've got a tech column, we've got a sort of business intelligence kind of lunch with column that's really popular, and we've had a couple others that we discontinued, but those are the 2 that we publish in print. Online, honestly, it's come what may. Like the diaries, for example, arguably the TED diaries, those were a column. Something else that that we've done is just kind of the editorial advisory boards, the thoughts from the top. That's a column. But it is very much it's the daily product is more of a what versus the why, increasingly in terms of stories and what gets covered. However, the why is it's just a wonderful alternative to the constant 200-word hit of this happened. So it's hard to say online. It's a bit of a mixed bag. But on the print side, it's opinionated columns, but also it's increasingly as part of our redesign. It's opinionated point of view journalism, advocacy for doing business and business people in British Columbia. I think all good journalism should be opinionated, and display advocacy. So advocacy to the audience and the readership. So hopefully that answers your question. Right here. So does BC Business promote stories on the weekend? Yeah. Post and promote. Yeah. So we have we don't have a weekend product yet, but that is certainly something that we're going to be rolling out on a Saturday morning deployment. Again, our research shows us that people do read their newspapers, their business section on a Saturday morning. So this is going back to marketing as well. We had a Saturday morning product that went out, which was the Essential Weekend Reading. That's something that we plan on recreating with BC Business as well. So that will definitely be posted in the coming months, or created in the coming months, but also promoted appropriately throughout. But in terms of tweeting and posting stuff to Facebook, that happens throughout the weekend. Obviously, dies down, but the stats show that people do use Twitter extensively on the weekend, and it'd be foolish not to take advantage of those trends. Very good question. Do we eventually see moving to online only and no print? Our readership right now is decidedly in print, and by extension also iPad, right? So I think it's not just a print or online question. I think it's a magazine format question. I think we're going to be definitely a print product for many years to come. However, you really can't argue with the fact that latest numbers are 30% of Canadians own some sort of tablet. Like, that is shocking. And 6 months ago, it was like low 20s. So that's an unprecedented adoption rate. And like I said, we just took the wrapping off of our iPad app, and that experience, and just watching readers and even staff who've never really read anything on the iPad, never mind their own work, it's a beautiful thing to see. So I think first and foremost, we're really going to expand the iPad app. Really try to make that one sing. And in terms of trying things in the digital space exclusively, I think it's that leap is going to be a hop to the iPad first before a leap into anything else. But honestly, it's a mobile world, right? It's a sort of a slippery slope. Once you talk about digital, it's I think a matter of a few, a year or two or three really before digital and tablet are you're sort of interchangeable. But it's a mobile web now increasingly. So how's that for a non-answer? A question about CMS. We use Drupal, which isn't my first choice, but that's kind of what I inherited and have to suffer through it. I'm a bit of a WordPress freak myself. Very good question. Have your print advertisers followed you to your online product? The print product is very much it's a legacy product. We've got advertisers who've been with us for decades, really, and we're right now in the process of a lot of education happening to our with our product and with our advertisers. People just love seeing their ad in the print product. And frankly, the analytics side of things is something that they obviously think about, but it's not as I guess as vital as as you'd think it would be. So we do deliver quite an audience online, increasingly so now with our ramp up of content production and as well as inventory with the daily newsletter. So it's just a matter of time before our print advertisers follow us. However, these things haven't really existed in a sustainable way, so it is too early to tell. But honestly, I mean, you really can't argue with the analytics. I don't foresee them, not following. Oh, good to see someone else suffers Drupal. I know. I don't know why they still use it, but they do. All right. All right. Oh, great question. How does web content turn into a longer feature? So, case in point, this TED story. We're just in the process of developing. So that we broke it. It was the what, right? So, hey, TED's coming to Vancouver. Read about it here first. Exclusive interviews, not just a rewritten press release. Go, and that was through the roof. Again, the kind of we decided before committing to a print story to kind of link bait it a little bit. We built these TED diaries from people who were down there. Chris Hadfield, the astronaut, did like a TED welcome. We shot that. That's on bcbusiness.ca/videos that I told you to go to. Watch my video first though, then Chris Hadfield. Anyway, but so basically, we kind of we knew it was big, but we just wanted to see how big. And again, every TED-related thing we posted really worked well for us. So that was brought up at that stage of the pitch session. I think we should do something for TED. Well, we've done it, covered it to death online. What should we do? Well, we can treat it differently in print because we could have analysis and we could have a deeper think about this, and it's things that wouldn't really work online. And that's an example, I guess the most recent example of how something that just caught fire online as basically, like a 400-word little story on a Monday morning a month ago to something that's going to be a nice, robust feature. That's actually, because it's a robust feature, we are allotting additional digital resources to it, videographer, sort of website only and iPad only sidebars, that is going to really enhance the iPad product, but also enhance, with those arrows that I showed you with in the diagram, enhance the online experience as well, because it buys us time by committing to something in print to develop it and sort of cascade it down back to the website. Okay, that's all the time we've got, guys. Thank you so much. You've got my contact info, so as you can tell, I can talk about this stuff till I'm blue in the face. Thanks very much.
I will just give a quick extra and thank Tom Gierasimczuk for joining us this afternoon. He flew in from Vancouver to the cold climates of Calgary to brave some of our dry weather.